Hi! So we're going to start lying on our back. Feet flat on the floor, knees bent. Start with your feet together, then turn your toes out, then turn your heels out so that your feet are in a nice alignment with your hips. Try and keep your shoulders away from your ears so your head, neck and shoulders are all nice and relaxed. It's really common after pregnancy to have a rib flare. I still have a rib flare 2.5 years later. But when you're in this position, you want to try and make sure that you're pulling those ribs down so that you're not flaring them out. The other thing we want to try and ensure in this position is we've got a neutral spine. So if you take your thumbs and your index fingers to make a diamond, put your thumbs on your belly button and then your index fingers pointing down towards your feet. And in that diamond, imagine you've got a marble and just roll that down towards your index fingers and then roll that marble all the way back up to your thumbs. And just, if you do that a few times, it just starts getting your core working for a start, but it'll also help you find that neutral spine. So what you want to eventually come to is a point where that marble would just stay in the middle of that diamond and it wouldn't rock anywhere. So your tummy's going to be relatively flat. Your back will either be flat on the floor or you probably like me and you've got a small tiny little gap underneath, enough to fit a piece of paper underneath or something like that. From here, it's really nice to just practice your breathing because it kind of gets a bit out of sync after pregnancy. You tend to either breathe a lot through your ribs or a lot through your tummy. What I would recommend doing is putting one hand on one side of your ribs, one hand on your tummy, and as you breathe in, both hands want to rise basically, like that, and then as you breathe out, they just relax back down. You could put both hands on either side of your ribs just to make sure that they're expanding. What you want to try and avoid doing is trying to breathe up like that. Everything wants to go out, not necessarily up. So I'd recommend practicing your breathing in this position, practice it in sitting, practice it in standing, just to kind of rejig everything about. And then the other thing that I would practice is, obviously you're hopefully doing pelvic floor exercises anyway, but incorporate that into your breathing. So as you take a breath in, everything relaxes, pelvic floor totally relaxes. As you breathe out, you pull that pelvic floor up. So you probably feel it in your back passage first. And then again you breathe in and everything relaxes. Okay? We're going to try and incorporate some of your breathing into these Pilates exercises. So to start off with, we're in this nice position, no rib flaring. You're going to take a breath in. And then as you breathe out, you're going to slide one heel away from you, just as far as you can. And then breathe that leg back in. And again, breathe out and breathe that leg away. And what you're trying to do here is trying to keep this nice and flat. So we've got a bit of a contraction on our tummy, so our tummy button's being pulled back towards our spine to stop any rocking in that pelvis. So we're just sliding that foot away and then coming back up again. If you find that you get to a point and you feel like your pelvis wants to tilt, just practice going to that point, keeping that pelvis nice and neutral so we're not arching our back. And then obviously repeat on the other side, so breathing out to take that leg away and breathing back in to bring that leg back. Breathing out, taking that leg away and breathing in and bringing that leg back. Now we can make that slightly harder by breathing one leg up into a tabletop here. Again, making sure that we've got our tummy button pulled back towards our spine gently, we're not arching our back. This leg that's bent, you're going to breathe it out and imagine you're turning off a light switch. So you take a breath in to prepare, and then as you breathe out, you stretch that leg away. So your knees are relatively level, we're imagining we're turning a light switch off, and then you breathe that leg back in, and then you breathe that leg away, and breathe that leg back in, and breathe that leg away, and breathe that leg back in. So this is already slightly harder on your tummy muscles. Good. If that feels okay, and we've not really got too much doming going on, what you can also do is to pretend you're turning off a plug socket, so that leg's going to go close to the floor. But again, we're making sure we're not arching our low back. We're keeping that low back just in that nice neutral position. We've still got that contraction on, tummy button pulled back towards our spine, no rib flaring. And we breathe that leg away, and breathe it back in. And then do the same on the other side. So we'd lift our other leg up into a tabletop position. And again, we'd breathe that leg away and turn off that light switch and breathe that leg back in and breathe it away and breathe that leg back in and breathe that leg away and breathe it back in. Good. And like I said, like we did before, we can either stay here, just making sure we're not flaring our ribs, tummy buttons pulled back gently towards our spine, we're not arching our back, or we can make it harder and we can turn off a plug socket. So obviously as our legs going lower to the ground, it does make it harder because there's more temptation to tilt that pelvis, but we want to keep it nice and solid. It's okay if some days this feels a bit too hard, feels a bit too much stress on your tummy, that's fine. Just stick with turning the light switch off. You can mix and match, entirely up to you. And then come back here. Your next one again, keeping this nice position, no rib flaring, neutral spine. Float your hands up so they're above your shoulders. And you're going to take a breath in, and as you breathe out, you're going to float your arms above your head, just as far as you can, without arching your upper back. If your hands can go all the way down to the floor, that's great. If they don't quite go down that far today, that's absolutely fine. But we're just taking our arms overhead as we breathe out to a point that feels good, and then breathe them back in, up to the top. Breathe out and take them overhead, and breathe in and come back up. Breathe out and breathe in. That's another nice exercise for you to practice. Another really good one for diastisis is bring one leg back up to a tabletop, and then your opposite hand, you push it into your knee. So you take a breath in to prepare, and then you breathe out for 4, and as you breathe out, you push hand into knee. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then breathe in and just relax that. And breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in and relax. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're pushing hand to knee. We're trying to get our obliques working. That's what's going to help either close that diastasis if that's what happens, or it's going to make it a lot more functional. And relax. And breathe out and push hand into knee, knee into hand. And relax. And again, breathe out and push hand into knee, knee into hand. And relax everything back down, and then do the other side. So float your other knee up, hand into knee, breathe in, and as you breathe out, push hand to knee. 2, 3, 4, then relax. And then breathe out and push. So we're working across the front of our body. And relax, breathe in. Breathe out and push. 2, 3, 4. Breathe in and relax. Breathe out and push. 2, 3, 4. If you've got like a small ball or something, you could put that in between your hand and your knee. So you're pressing into that small ball. Entirely up to you. Good. And then come down. Another slightly harder exercise is just floating one knee up to a tabletop, and then this leg, we're just going to tap those toes onto the floor and come back up. So tap those toes onto the floor and come back up. Again, working our breathing. So we breathe out as we tap our foot down. Breathe in, bring that leg back up. Breathe out and tap. And breathe in, come back up again. We've got our tummy button pulled lightly back in towards our spine. We're making sure that we're not rocking our pelvis. If it feels too hard and you feel like you are rocking, you can always tap your foot closer to yourself, closer towards your bottom, so you've not got as long a lever, so it'll be easier. And then to progress it, obviously just tap further out. Just making sure we're keeping that nice contraction, no rib flaring. And then obviously repeat on the other side. So breathe in to get that leg up, and breathe out and tap, and breathe in and breathe out and tap and breathe in. And again, you can tap. You're ideally aiming to keep that knee at 90, but if that feels like it's too hard or it causes any doming or coning in your tummy, just tap a little bit closer to your bottom. So you're shortening that lever and making it easier, just like that. Or we can go back to there, making sure we're working our breathing. So breathe out and tap down and breathe in, come back up. Breathe out, tap down, breathe in, come back up. Okay, another one which you will have no doubt done before is bridging. Obviously when you've had a baby, especially if you're breastfeeding, you tend to spend a lot of time sitting, so your glutes switch off. That can lead to back pain, hip pain, all sorts of pain. So we're gonna work up to a shoulder bridge. Ideally you'd have your hands out by your side. I'm gonna take my arm overhead just so you can see what my back's doing. So to start off with, just practice some pelvic tilt. So we're just really trying to tuck that tailbone underneath and then coming back down. And we're trying to tuck that tailbone underneath and come back down. So we're trying to get that smooth movement. Again, working with your breath. So breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. And if that feels great, take a nice breath in, and then as you breathe out, tuck that tailbone underneath, and then really slowly roll that spine off the floor, bone by bone, until you come up into a nice straight line. Take a breath in at the top, and as you breathe out, I want you to try and curl that spine, so you press upper back, down, back in. And then we're keeping that pelvis really, really tucked as we're rolling that spine bone by bone by bone, all the way back down until we've landed. Take a breath in, and then as you breathe out, we tuck underneath and curl that spine up. A breath in at the top and breathe out. If you're finding it hard, come up onto your tiptoes. It'll just help you squeeze your bottom muscles a little bit more to help with that curling down movement. It took me ages to get the curl down movement properly after my second. Just nice, smooth movements. Just really nice and slow. If you find that there's a point in your back that kind of feels like it's stuck, you could just work into that movement. So you're not going the whole way up, you're just working up to that point where it feels like it gets a bit stuck, and then you roll back down. Entirely up to you. But this is a really nice exercise to practice. The slower the better, really. Another nice one for glutes postnatally is coming to lie on your side. You want to be in your spine to be nice and straight. Sometimes it's worth having a tiny, like a folded up towel or something here, just to straighten yourself out. You want to stack your hips, so one on top of the other. Probably got a little tiny gap underneath your waist, just to make sure that you're not collapsing down here. So we are in a nice straight line and our hips are stacked. Your heels want to be roughly in line with your bottom. You want to keep your feet together throughout this exercise. Back's nice and straight, tummy buttons gently pull back towards our spine, and all we're going to do is just lift that top leg up and then come back down again. So lift that top leg up, press those feet together and come back down. If we incorporate our breath here, we breathe out as we go up and breathe in as we come back down. We really want to think about keeping those hips stacked, one on top of the other, so they're not rolling forwards and back. And likewise, as we lift up, we're not collapsing here. We've still got a little gap underneath there, and our spine's nice and neutral. This is a really nice exercise just to wake those glutes up. And don't worry if it feels too easy, because I've got absolutely loads to make it harder. If it does feel too easy and you think, oh, I just want to push myself a little bit more, listen to your body. But if it does feel great, you can lift both feet off the floor and then lift that top knee, just so you're working more of a range. If you have any like pubic symphysis pain, this might aggravate it a little bit because you're putting a little bit more stress through it, so you might just want to stick here and come up and down. While we're on this side, a really nice stretch for your upper back is if you take both hands out to one side. We're going to stay in this position, so again our hips are going to stay stacked, but this top arm, we're just going to take it all the way over to the other side as far as we can, but keeping those hips stacked. It's a really lovely stretch for your upper back, which again, with breastfeeding, carrying a baby around all the time, plus 2 other children, it tends to get really, really tight. And you can either hold that position or you can just move through it. So you can do a little bit of dynamic forwards and backwards. So we're moving Really gives those pecs a nice stretch, which again, breastfeeding, holding a baby, tend to get really, really tight. So that's a lovely exercise. We're going to come and do the clam on our other side. Just because obviously we need to be even. So again, set up just as we did before. Spine's nice and straight. Tummy buttons gently pull back towards our spine. Feet are in line with our bottom. Hips stacked, knees stacked, feet stacked. Feet stay together. Take a breath in, and as we breathe out, that top leg just comes up, and breathe it back in. Breathe out, and breathe it back in. Again, those hips are staying stacked. What you'll probably find is after a few repetitions of this, you get a bit of burning kind of here. That's perfect, that's exactly where we want it. And again, you can stay here if that feels enough, or if you're feeling particularly daring, lift your feet and just work through that bigger range there. But again, be mindful of how your body feels, how tired it feels, how much you've been doing. Sometimes this might feel like a bit too much. Remember, we're just taking it easy, getting our body moving again, waking up those bottom muscles again, waking up that core. So that's a really lovely exercise. And again, back on this side, keeping those hands out in front of you and just taking that top arm behind you. If you're like me, one side's much tighter than the other. This is one of my favourite stretches to do. Make sure to try and keep your hips stacked so that they're not rolling back too much, just because it'll give you a stronger stretch. If the stretch does feel too strong, however, you can let yourself go. I prefer to keep my hips nice and stacked, so I'm really giving my upper back and my pecs a bit of a stretch. And again, like before, you can either do it, keep moving, so keep it dynamic. So again, breathe out and breathe in, or you can take that arm out and just hold it there. Just relax into that position, which is a really nice stretch. And then the last stretch that's really nice to do, again, for your upper back, is coming onto your hands and knees. This is a really nice position to practice that breathing we were doing before, just because I didn't like doing it postnatally, but as you breathe in, everything just relaxes, and then as you breathe out, you'll find you pull up your pelvic floor and this tummy disappears, because naturally your pelvic floor and your deep abdominal muscles, they're connected. So you breathe in, relax your pelvic floor, relax your tummy muscles. As you breathe out and pull up your pelvic floor, these muscles naturally contract. So to start off with, it's quite a nice position to practice in. Your wrists are underneath your elbows, knees are underneath your hips. If you struggle with wrist pain, you can always bring your hands further forward from your shoulders. But this position, like I said, is lovely for practicing that breathing, so making sure we're getting that rib expansion as well as that belly expansion. And then as you breathe out, pull up that pelvic floor, and that tummy will naturally come in. And again, one of my very favourite stretches for upper backs is cat-cow, which you've no doubt done before. But again, you breathe in and you lift your tailbone, shoot that heart forward, lift up, and as you breathe out, you push the floor away and really curl that upper back and tuck your chin to your chest. So you breathe in and arch, and breathe out and push up. If as you breathe in, that feels like it's too much pressure on your back, just come back to neutral. Some people postnatally find that actually overarching their back hurts too much, so or it feels too strange on their tummy. So you can just come back to neutral and then push up. Breathe into neutral and then push up. Breathe into neutral and push up. And there you go. So hopefully some exercises to keep you going. Let me know how you go.